Hi, I'm Rachel, one of the hosts of the Strange and Beautiful Network. On our network, we specialize in unscripted podcasts like Feast, Sheath, and Shatter, a book chat podcast that feels like hanging out with your best girlfriends and a good, or not so good, book. Come in 81 Kilo, the only currently in production podcast about Forever Night, the 1990s vampire cop show that started it all. And Strange and Beautiful Book Club, our first podcast featuring books and movies in the sci-fi, fantasy, and horror genres that you've probably never heard of but shouldn't miss. Join us today anywhere podcasts are streamed.
I don't know where my Genesis could be. I haven't seen my Super Nintendo since 2003. That's alright. I don't mind. I've got a Switch in the old switcheroo. My friend Mike and J-Mo too.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and J-Mo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm J-Mo. Join us on our epic quest to research and review all 200 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online retro catalog. Today, we will be our way through Mappy-Land, Flicky, and Spanky's quest in an episode that we are calling You and Me, Baby, Ain't Nothing But Mascots. Now, Mike, I'd like to think we're a pair of characters, right? You consider me a character, right, Mike?
Yeah, character's one word for it.
A little more enthusiasm would be great. Problem, though, there are two of us, right? We're discussing three characters today. I think we need one more person on this side of the screen. Do you know of anyone that's full of character that might want to join us today?
Yeah, I think we can bring in Butch for this. Butch is a Twitch streamer that I will let him introduce what he games the most. Butch, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm SSJ3 Butch. As he said, I stream on Twitch. I stream all kinds of different things, but I mainly focus on story-driven games. I do a lot of horror games. I do a lot of Zelda randomizers. I do Pokemon games. So I do a wide assortment of different video games on my stream.
It's crazy because you're a friend of the show, Riri Yells.
Correct.
And the first time I saw her, she was doing a Bowsette randomizer for Zelda. And so I was checking out your randomizers today. You played a Power Rangers randomizer.
Yes.
But that wasn't a multiplayer thing, right? It was like a reskinning.
Yes. Yeah. So, that one was just a single player reskinning, although we do some multiplayer ones once in a while and do some like crossover ones. So those are always fun.
Awesome. And I saw like it changed up the music. So who is your Ranger? Because I remember you weren't a Power Ranger kid, but I was definitely a Red Ranger kid.
So mine, if you know anything about me, mine is the Green Ranger.
Okay, explain.
Funnily enough, I used to be a Red Ranger kid until Tommy shows up. And then they have the martial arts tournament, and it ends up in a tie.
That's intense.
Yeah, and as a kid, that blows your mind. And, now as an adult, you look back and it's like, okay, it's cheesy, whatever. But, as a kid, that as a Jason Red Ranger fan, and this new kid comes in and just bodies the strongest member of the team, and then at the time pulls the feat of destroying a whole squad of putties, unmorphed by himself. You're like,
I remember that scene.
Yes. You're like, that is the guy right there.
That's
and of course, he gets the gold shield. He has the dragon dagger. He has the dragon zord. Like, I'm sorry. He's just like, yeah, eventually he becomes a white ranger. And people are like, yeah, white. No, Green Ranger all the way for me.
Heck yeah. I love the dagger, the flute. It was like an ocarina, I think, an ocarina dagger. Oh, so dope. Well, so your stream and your love for Power Rangers sounds excellent. So right now, though, let's dive into our first game for today, which is going to be Mappy-Land on the NES, released in 1989. I will start by reading the description on the official Nintendo Switch Online emulator. It reads, "Help Mappy make it back to the party in time. Mappy the police mouse has prepared all kinds of wonderful presents for Mappy-ko and Mappy Jr. But the big cheese of the feline world, Nyamko, has ordered his Clouder to hide the presents throughout Mappy-Land. If he's going to get the gifts to their intended recipients on time, Mappy will have to double time it on finding them. avoid and activate traps to knock out those crafty cats headed your way. You can also collect special items hidden in the level to distract them. Select 6 of the same presents to move on to another stage. Can Mappy make it through all 8 towns and survive the onslaught of claws? Beyond that amazing ending phrase, you guys have any thoughts on that description? I thought it was pretty fun.
I think it's actually a little interesting in that covers that there's a bunch of different motivations going on here, whereas the manual just introduces one of them. And what I find interesting, so the way the game is structured is that you basically play through it 4 times, each with a different purpose.
Right.
And for some reason, the manual picked the second one to focus on, which is the collecting all the rings to propose, which is not how proposal works.
So this game isn't super well known, so let's just kind of give a structure. It is a 2D platforming puzzler game. So this is a console-only sequel to Mappy, which was an arcade game in the same vein as Pac-Man. It's a sort of a 2D sort of platforming game, and your goal is to collect a number of pieces of artwork that the cats are trying to steal. Mappy-Land, you are now trying to collect things for your loved ones. So you're trying to collect presents, or as Mike said, you're trying to collect a whole bunch of engagement rings. Which, is she gonna wear one on each thing? I don't know why any one would need that many engagement rings. It seems excessive. The first impressions that people often have of the game is the cover art. So, Butch, let's start off with you. What's your take on the way that this game was advertised in terms of the box art?
So, as somebody who I guess grew up on anime, this to me has a very anime-esque, especially 80s anime-esque look to it. And kind of going back to your description of the game, that was what I like to call a very Nintendo description. You have this a simple platformer, 2D platformer, and they make this huge you have this epic journey that you have to do. And as Mike said, you're especially in that second go around, you're collecting engagement rings. But yeah, this cover definitely very 80s anime to me.
Yeah, you have the Mappy in the kind of front left of the frame here. His child, Mappy Jr., and his wife, Mappy Co., are sort of behind him, and they are distressed because they see, well, I thought his name was Goro, but I guess his name is Nyamko. But he's referred to Goro in the animated series, illustrated by Kris Straub and Scott Kurtz, a 2013 animated series devoted to Mappy. It is self-described as a office comedy about the dangers of unregulated capitalism. Believe that. And it sees Mappy retired from the police force and now doing corporate security for his arch rival, the cat. Did either of you guys get a chance to check out this cartoon series?
I watched some of this. I mean, when I started, I was very surprised to then see the credits roll after the first episode and see 2 names I recognize.
Yeah, what were those?
Scott Kurtz and Kris Straub.
Oh, the creators, yeah.
Yeah, because Scott Kurtz was PvP and Kris Straub was Checkerboard Nightmare, as far as webcomics go. I believe I may have met both of them.
And Dig Dug.
Yeah, and then there's Dig Dug in here for reasons.
It's sort of like a mashup of Namco characters. The Katamari Damacy Prince becomes one. The Time Crisis. I don't know if either of you guys remember Time Crisis. Butch, were you a Time Crisis boy?
Yeah, I did play it.
It was the shooter game in the arcade, and there was a
Yes.
pedal where you need to duck out of the way. And so there's great moments where the character drops something. He's like, "Hey, can you step on that pedal? I have to pick this up." It's pretty ridiculous.
I note that here Dig Dug doesn't have a mustache.
Yes, Mike. He does not have a mustache anywhere. Wow, you're still dragging me for episode 3. I think that one was. Wow, deep cut. That deep cut cuts deep, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you something about the makings of Mappy-Land. It was developed by Tosei Software, who made the NES version of Strauss family favorite game Toxic Crusaders. You're a Trauma Films person, right? You've seen the movies Toxic Avenger, right?
I have not, actually.
That's surprising, knowing you.
Yeah, no, that's a reasonable surprise.
I would suggest watching it.
Oh, you like it?
Yeah, I think they were pretty good movies. If you're into kind of gross out comedy, they're a good watch.
Are they comedy or horror? Because I'm pretty sure the first one's a horror, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. To me, it kind of draws that line of it is horror, but it also has comedy elements in it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of riding that line, I guess. To me, anyway. but maybe I have a sick sense of humor.
I mean, you and a lot of people, I'm sure. Tosei Software, in addition to making the Toxic Avengers game for NES, also made Super Tennis, which, if you can believe that, I mean, that game was the exact opposite of Toxic Avengers. So straightforward, so humorless. So Tosei Software has had quite the catalog. And the other piece of trivia I had is that Mappy, the name Mappy, is playfully derived from a playfully derogatory Japanese term for policeman. So if you kind of think like copper or like the fuzz, I guess po is what that would be in Japanese. What did you guys like about this game?
I think the one thing that I appreciated from this was, I guess I would describe this as somewhat forgiving, in that if you die on a level, you just have the ability to resume that level. So there's no like, okay, I have to go all the way back to the beginning. It was fairly easy to be like, okay, I'm just going to keep playing this level over and over. And I think that only backfired on me horribly one time, which was somewhere on, so because it's basically you play the first time through, you're gathering up cheese, and then you play it a second time through, and it's the wedding rings, and then it's Christmas trees, and then it's balls. And on the Christmas tree round, like 2/3 of the way through, it starts throwing in like pickup items before you move on. And so I believe what happened is that I picked up a torch, advanced to the next level that was underground, and then died. And I was like, oh, okay, we're going to resume this. And there were no platforms anymore. Don't know if this happened to anyone else, but I presume that because when I restarted that, it no longer knew that I'd gotten the torch before.
Right. The torch is an item you can pick up to illuminate dark areas.
Yeah, which I mean, it's not dark. It's just the platformers are all invisible. And I think I tried that for about 5 or 10 minutes of utter failure before I finally like just found someone playing it online just so I could see what the map looked like to figure out where I had to go, because I was running into like invisible walls.
Yeah.
So that was unpleasant, but other than that, it was nice that I could just kind of continue from where I was. And so if I got through a hard area, I didn't have to deal with it again.
Yeah, it's derived from, the arcade original. You just keep putting in quarters. An arcade game doesn't send you back to the beginning, because otherwise you wouldn't have an incentive
Yeah.
to put in more quarters. You just pick up, try again some other day. And I like the levels in this game. I like I said, it's sort of, in the same vein as Pac-Man, but this one, Mike, did you catch the consistent theming of the worlds in Mappy-Land? Because you, of all people, should have this fresh in your mind.
I'm not sure what you mean by the consistent theming.
It's Disneyland. You're going through Disneyland. There's the train, there's the Adventure Land, there's the Enchanted Castle, there's the pirates, there's the spooky level, the haunted level, and then you even end in the bonus stage. It's practically the Disney Castle. That's why it's called Mappy-Land, because it's a play on Disneyland. Did you not catch that?
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah. I thought that was neat though. Like I was surprised to see like themed levels, and it was like, okay, yeah, these levels cycle, but there's little things to discover about each one. They have the enemies have costumes themed to the area you're in, and there's little traps you can set, like zip lines and bombs you can explode. Which is there anything you liked about this game?
Yeah. So in the era of Nintendo games being unforgivingly hard a lot of times, especially, even though they're made for kids, they're like, here's this hard game. I have to agree with Mike that once if you die in a level or you get past a certain, tough spot, you're good to go. And I know you reiterated on the fact that it was an arcade port, and so like that to me, even for an older game, makes a good game, that you're not punished because you screwed up.
So did you guys have any favorites? How far did you all get? Because like there's a variety of different levels here, but this game isn't easy. So I could see, getting frustrated and giving up. Did each of you get through all 6 areas, at least in one rotation of them? Because like Mike said, you have to play through them multiple
Or
times.
there's 8 areas.
Yeah, yes. Well, okay, so all the areas, though, did you guys each get to see them at least once?
I went through 2 rotations, and then I was, kind of at the point like, well, okay, I played this, I know enough of it. I mean, I don't remember if I ever touched this game as a kid, so I can't really speak of back then. But yeah, for sure, when I touched it, I think I got through 2 rotations before I was like, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah, and like you are presumably tracking the development of Mappy's family because the first one you're getting cheese to impress his girlfriend. Second one you're getting rings to propose to her. The third one you are giving her Christmas trees. And the fan theory is that you get her so many Christmas trees that you guys have a wonderful night because the next mission you have a child. And the child, you're now giving them presents. You have to get it presents for his birthday party.
And I think the other element of tracking Mappy's life to this, I think, is like I made it fully through the first three rounds of this.
Oh.
And it was only on the fourth one that I finally gave up. And part of that was on the fourth one is where I realized I could no longer outrun anything.
Yeah.
And I think what they are doing is not that the enemies are getting faster, but that Mappy's getting slower because Mappy's getting old.
Really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, because it was stuff was catching me. And then I looked at it and like the character design is meant to look older and everything. I'm like, I think they're actually there's an actual aging process thing going on here.
That's wild. I like the little secrets in this game. Did you guys, so my favorite was the haunted area. That's the one where you grab onto a balloon. And it's like for that level, the gameplay is kind of different because now you're free moving with the balloon. You're shooting ghosts with, I mean, they say flashlight, I think, in the booklet, Mike, but it looks more like sound waves. So it's kind of confusing. I thought it was like a police horn or something. Did you guys discover the trick with the moon in this level?
I did not.
Wait, is that how I create a day at some point?
Yes. So if you touch the moon, that or I should say, if you fly past it because it's supposed to be in the background, it'll go, "Bleep," and then it'll switch to day, and all the ghosts will be instantly killed. And so I was like, that's cool. That's a little, a little fun secret.
I didn't realize I triggered that. I had that happen. I just didn't connect it to something I had done.
Yeah. The game's far from perfect, though. Any other Joy pros before we start complaining about it?
I think the rest of what I have somewhat will fall into the cons, a part of this.
Anything else to say in defense of the game, Butch?
I will say, and this goes back to once again being an older Nintendo game. And you brought up the whole thing of going through Disneyland. The backgrounds for sure were definitely a good touch because you do see, older games like that where you get 4 or 5 levels, and it's usually some that repeat or they've got some of the same motifs or whatever, and these ones do have a nice variety, which I mean for an 8-bit game you want to look at it, oh that's it's good looking art. Well, growing up in that time, that's what you got. So
And I mean, I totally agree with you because I think the standard at this stage of gaming history was like, okay, this is the red level. The next level will have blue platforms. I mean, even like the first Mario games, this is better themed than a lot of games of that era.
Mhm.
So I thought that was neat. I found Mappy very frustrating to control. His jump is a puny jump on him, and you can jump over enemies, but only perfect timing. So I can't imagine that you guys, well, actually, I know Mike, not rewinding. I can't imagine you were jumping over very many enemies. Butch, when you played this, did you play it on the Nintendo Switch Online emulator?
yeah.
And so did you use the rewind function and the save states?
There were a couple times that I did, just to kind of like learn a few things, and learn a couple of spots that I could probably do better. But for the most part, I didn't too much.
So you didn't beat the game,
No.
and Mike didn't beat the game,
No.
but JMO Nintended.
Family computer.
Yeah, I had a child and I was on time for his birthday party. So that game fully completed. It does do that annoying thing where it loops, then it takes you back to level 1, but I got as close to an ending as is possible. So I'm considering that one beaten. But yeah, I mean it was tough. Even with rewinding like a madman, it was hard because mapping moves so slow. Split second timing is needed to avoid enemies. And it bugged me how like to get to the next level, you have to use these trampolines. And it feels so strange because the enemies, with the exception of one, can't kill you while you're bouncing on a trampoline. It's almost like you're all just having fun together. And for that moment, you're no longer antagonistic. And you can only move to another level on your descent. You can't jump up to another level. You have to jump up past it, and then as you're falling, nudge yourself onto it. It was just so demanding in terms of precision, but I feel like the controls kind of didn't get you there. What do you guys think of the controls?
I think there was two parts to controls that I found incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like the jump thing I can deal with. I'm fine with that. The two things were that number one, especially I think on the jungle levels where it's moving trampolines, I would clip through the trampolines every so often on one of the edges, which is incredibly frustrating as a way to die. I'm already realizing this is going to become more than two things the more I think about the jungle levels. The fact that on the jungle levels, I'd often hit a nope, at this point, you can no longer control your descent. You've moved as far as you're going to, was very frustrating. And I also don't think that you should actually die if you fall from not a trampoline, because there's so many, there's so few spots where that happens that it's just this obnoxious extra mechanic. It's like, if you just remove that, it's not like it would break the game's functionality. It would just make several spots much less frustrating. And like, that's a thing you had to code in to be how that would work. Like, that's an intentional decision on their part. And then the last one, which mostly came up when I was dealing with moving platforms and the jungle stuff, is there's a point at which you get too close to the edge and Mappy just decides to jump. And it's not like I've fallen off the edge. It's that Mappy's been like, oh, here's where we jump. And it's like, the finickiness on this is, it wasn't a problem on any of the other levels, really. So there's something about the way the jungle levels have these moving platforms, I think, where just it didn't play well when it gets into things like the edges of those boundaries and how that's working, that just because the other levels were so set up to be centered around the trampolines as sort of these vertical corridors, those were all fine. It was every playthrough I would loathe coming up on the jungle level because I knew it was just going to be frustrating.
Butch, did you also find it frustrating?
Yeah, I would agree that the jungle level definitely was a frustrating point, with the moving platforms or the moving trampolines where you'd fall through. I had that a couple times. The controls overall too, and going back to, what you said about, Mario, this is where Mario exists. You have good jumping controls. Why can't we have better jumping controls? That might have been a creative decision on their part, but I did find the mechanics of it frustrating at times.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was definitely a choice as far as like, this is the kind of game it's going to be, but that doesn't translate to more fun. And I also just thought the gameplay loop was kind of frustrating because at the end of every round of levels, you have this bonus level where you have to gather all the things you found and present it to your loved one, but in a certain amount of time. And they go, no, you're too late for my birthday party. And you have no choice but to try again. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you're sort of in this like toxic relationship with your own family, and you have no choice but to acquiesce to their unreasonable demands of pleasing them in a timely manner. I was just like, man, I should want to please my family, but I didn't want to give in to them. They were annoying me.
I mean, maybe this is what happens when you're playing this on rewind, but at that point, the fact that I could just go do that again and not have to worry about dying in the process, and it was just a time thing, I enjoyed that. It was just, okay, what do I need to do to kind of optimize this?
I guess at that point, it's like a puzzle element because, like, there's a certain combination of moves you can do to get there in time.
Yeah.
Do it over and over again. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. It was annoying to me because I was rewinding anyway. All right. Anything else to say about Mappy-Land before we move on to our second game?
Yes. First of all, I find it very interesting. The manual covers, like, it has your weapons for defense that I don't fully understand, having read the manual and played the game. But the idea was that you have things that would slow down whoever was pursuing you, hopefully. And then you had weapons for fighting that would actually knock them out. And what I like about this is, so each level had its own weapons for fighting.
Yeah.
And the weapon for fighting, according to the manual on level 4, is no weapon. And there's just something about the way that they did that.
Right. But they saw the audacity to print it that way in the booklet.
Yeah. Yeah. That, and there's a weird level of, I guess, laziness on the 7th level, which is the sort of city street, which I guess is Main Street if this is Disneyland.
That's right.
Which they just decided to call 7th Avenue, which kind of felt like we weren't bothering to try.
Because it's the 7th area.
Yeah, it's the 7th. Yeah, 7th area. We're just going to call that the 7th level.
I think that's clever.
The one bit that I think was frustrating, I guess not that they do it, but the way that they communicate it is so for I guess it's probably most of these, but start like especially the early levels, you start on the left, you collect all your stuff, you exit the screen on the right.
Yeah.
At a certain point, this game starts to throw in the idea of like, congratulations, now there's extra junk you have to do.
Yes.
And some of that is like, I think I realized that you have to get past a vampire on the spooky level.
Yes.
And so that is why you have to go get a crucifix. And it wasn't until like I passed it that I'm like, wait a minute. I think I see what we've just done.
Yeah. So on the second or third run through, they add a gatekeeper at the end of the stage. And there's somewhere hidden in the levels that you need to access to get the item. So, like you said, to get past the vampire, you need to find the crucifix. And like sometimes it's really difficult. Like the one in the train station. I don't know if you guys figured that one. You have to go like underneath the train to get into one of the cabs or whatever. It was just like I never in a million years would have guessed to go in there. So yeah, it's very, very opaque.
I think that one was in the manual, I believe. And I think it also mentions like the church thing on this sixth level. And I think that one was clear enough that it just is an in general thing that like I wrote that down when I went through the manual. Like this is gonna annoy me later, isn't it? Because I think that was like on the first time through, you have to do that on that level. And it just feels like something where I'm like, I wish this communicated that this was happening better.
Yeah.
To know, okay, it's like, it's one thing to be like, okay, I know where I need to get to. It's another thing where like, I know where I need to finish, but there's something else I have to do that is hidden in here, and it's a total pain to find.
Yeah, because the little gatekeeper, you just literally can't get past him. There's no sound effect, there's no animation, there's no text, and you're just like, heck, like I just did this last time. What's happening? The cat Niamco or Goro, whatever you want to call him, he's like obsessed with money. And there's some clever theming there as far as like giving him, if you throw a coin at his feet, he'll get all happy and dance, and now he's not trying to attack you anymore. But if you take too long on a level, he'll send a killer coin to come and get you, and it'll home in on you, and it's the only thing that can kill you on trampolines. And Butch, Mike, can you guys think of any other game ever where a coin kills you? Because I feel like coin is universally like, this is a good thing. So I was like, oh cool, what?
No.
Yeah, Butch, anything come to mind?
No, I can't think of one where coins kill you.
Right? So I was like, that felt weird.
I didn't know it even did that.
Oh, yeah, it does. If you take too long. Butch, anything else to say about Mappy-Land before we go on to game number 2?
I do find the mechanic, and I didn't realize this was actually happening when you went more rotations through, you actually slowed down. And I'd actually gotten to the point, I'm like, why do I feel like I'm going so much slower? So the fact that Mike, you pointed that out as you're going along, you're slowing down or the enemies are getting faster, one of the two. But it does make the concept of like, there's something going on why I'm not moving as fast as I used to. So that I thought was an interesting concept. Now that you pointed it out, at the time I thought it was kind of frustrating. So that's kind of nifty.
I think Mike might have discovered something, because I did a lot of research into Mappy-Land. I didn't hear anyone saying that, but it does stick with the theme of like he's aging, he's going through his life. It kind of would have been cool if there was if you're right, give him like a little beard or something in the final run through.
I thought it did look slightly more grayed on the last one.
Interesting.
I'm also now realizing when you bring up the villain is like this boss cat, very concerned with money, sort of a fat cat, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a crime-solving mouse. I kind of just want to go watch Rescue Rangers now.
Yeah, I was thinking Great Mouse Detective, like one of those two.
No, because Great Mouse Detective, the villain is a rat.
That's pretending to be.
No, just a rat. I think you are confusing all of this with Feifel Goes West, which is a cat pretending to be a mouse.
Mike, you are king of the segues. Let's move on to Flicky, released on the Sega Genesis in 1991. And I'm going to pull up the description on the official Nintendo Switch online emulator for the Sega Genesis. And it's wild. It's so weird how, like, I was going to talk about cryptozoology and then what was that thing called we were talking about before we started recording? The Hodag
The Hodag, yes.
The Hodag. Now, Mike's bringing up Fightful of all things, but it does tie in. So here's the description of Flicky. Action game starring Flicky, the adorable blue bird you might recognize from the Sonic series. The little chirps are sunbathing on the terrace when snack time comes. Flicky arrives to pick them up, and everyone holds hands and gets ready to go home. But oh no, it's Tiger, that mean old cat. Jump to get away, then smack him with a hammer or a mug. Get all the chirps home so you can rest easy, Flicky. This is the cover art for Flicky, which was often people's first impressions. Butch, can we throw this one to you? What do you think of the Flicky box art?
So this one I actually did play when I was younger. And this was
Did
one
you?
of those, yes, that you went back in the day, even before like Blockbuster, or if you're one of those people that had a Hollywood Video, you went to your local mom and pop to rent it, and you had the box, and then behind it you had the plastic shell, right? So as a kid growing up, you looked at the cover, and that's like, oh, that looks interesting. That's what I'm gonna get for the weekend. And I did that with this game because I was like, this looks like it could be a good game. You've got the bird with being attacked by the cat, and I was like, okay, this has got to be something I enjoy. Little did I know, in my young naive years, it was not what I expected. But it definitely is one of those that can grab your attention if you're younger.
Yeah, it's very striking.
The way the wings are outstretched also looks like it is Flicky actively protecting the other birds, who all have sunglasses on.
Yes, so you have the baby birds in the foreground. You have Flicky spreading his wings, blocking them from the giant face of Tiger, the cat, reaching over and kind of trying to presumably claw at the chirps. This image, though, always reminded me this, Mike, the American Tail stunt show at Universal Studios, which I looked it up, what did have its run at Universal like 2 years before this game came out. It's just this iconography of this giant orange cat. Mike, do you remember the cat's name from American Tail and Fightful? It's Tiger.
It is. I thought it was Tiger, but I wasn't confident.
It's Tiger. Yeah, and you got this giant orange cat, and it's just like this could be something.
I mean, it feels like kind of a go-to name in the same sense that like one of the other threats are the lizards that are
named the iguana.
That are named Iggy, which I think Iggy the iguana was also a character on the TV show Under the Umbrella Tree.
Well, it's also Iggy's Wrecking Balls. He's an iguana wrecking ball. I don't know.
And then wasn't the lizard character in what was that game where you played as monsters and you smashed the city? The
Rampage?
Yeah, Rampage. I think that wasn't the lizard named Iggy in that one too.
I thought it's Liz.
Oh, maybe it is Liz. Okay.
It's Liz or Lizzie. Yeah, Ralph, George, and Lizzie or Liz. Yeah.
Okay.
But still, though, I mean, Lizard, Liz,
yeah.
Iguana. It's
actually in that same vein. I just really appreciate this, but it's not recognized by most of the world. In The Rescuers Down Under, there is a monitor lizard named Joanna, which does not seem particularly clever, except Australia, because the first European settlers misidentified the lizard and then mispronounced what the name of that lizard would be. They misidentified these as iguanas, which they called goannas. And so it is Joanna the goanna, which only makes sense if you know that Australia has screwed up the name on this and calls it something different from the rest of the world.
That is wild. Okay, back on topic, Mike. I got to show you guys the cover for the 8-bit Master System of Flicky. It is wild.
Jesus Christ.
Right? So it is completely flipping the narrative. Now you have Tiger at the bottom of the image being just assaulted. Mike, what do you see here?
First of all, Flicky seems very distressed about what's going on, even though Flicky is doing it. That expression is just, I don't even know how to explain that expression on Flicky. It's just this, it's almost like a 1,000-yard stare. While Flicky is holding a hammer, we've got a cup of coffee falling, like a baby bottle falling, a knife sticking into the ground, and there's a gun just falling right now.
Yes. All raining down on, if not the cat, then near the cat.
Yeah, so I can only presume the gun has ran out of bullets and they've therefore thrown the gun.
Or it's going to go off when it lands. Like, it's twisted. But, I mean, okay. So, hyper-violent animals for a game released in the 90s. Are you guys pondering what I'm pondering?
I mean, I think so, Jeremy, but where are we going to get that much cello?
This is an itchy scratchy thing, right? They're capitalizing on itchy and scratchy, or at least Tom and Jerry. But to me,
I was going to say I'd almost go Sylvester and Tweety.
Uh-huh. But like to a sadistic level, I think.
Those used to be.
Oh, like the retro ones, the older ones are really violent.
Yeah, there was a lot of like maybe we shouldn't have this in modern Looney Tunes. There's a Looney Tunes where where I think it's Bugs Bunny drives a character to suicide on screen.
Oh, I think I remember that one.
There's a separate ending to that.
That is dark. Well, this game was published by Segi and Bally Midway. It was discussed in our pinball episode. The developer Yoji Ishii also worked on Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. We will also revisit his work in Fantasy Zone, which is a real psychedelic shooter game on the Genesis. It had a really cool cameo in Sonic Superstars. Butch, are you a Sonic boy? I know you're an anime guy, but Sonic the Hedgehog, does that land for you?
Yeah, definitely the earlier versions, your 2Ds, and then the Sonic Adventures. I definitely got to, especially you said I was into anime. My other big passion besides Power Rangers is Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
So you had that whole lineup. You got Super Sonic and how all the characters kind of relate, 1-to-1 to Dragon Ball characters. So yeah, once you started getting into like Sonic 06 territory and further, that's where it starts to get a little rough for me.
They lose you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm a diehard. I beat Sonic 06. That's what of a glutton for punishment I am.
I did too. I powered through it just because the Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver. I wanted to get the whole Super Saiyan thing going, and then once I finished it, I was like, I am never ever touching that dumpster fire ever again.
Yeah. So did you recognize the Flickies from Sonic series then? Like, 'cause, I mean, the description says it, but like, Mike, you had Sonic 3D Blast, I think, on the Genesis, didn't you?
I'm not sure.
Pretty sure the Lunds had this one.
This is beginning to feel familiar, though.
It's an isometric Sonic game, and you had to explore these 3D areas, and you had to collect all the Flickies and lead them to the exit, which is essentially the gameplay loop of Flicky. But I mean, I think, before I don't get into Joy Pros, Joy Cons, but I think it worked a lot better in Sonic 3D Blast than it does in this game.
It would be hard to do worse.
Okay, hold off on the Joy Cons. We'll get there. I got one more juicy piece of trivia for you boys. So this game was renamed. They originally, I think it was going to be Busty, and they're like, we can't call the game Busty. That's just way too close. But
This
so
would have been an amazing episode. This would have been an amazing episode if we had Busty followed by Spanky's Quest.
But Mike,
they deprived us.
Well, no, they didn't. Not if you work hard enough, because get this. This game has a truly baffling Easter egg. If you earn 250,000 points by the end of level 10, which means you need to beat every level in less than 20 seconds and deposit. So, sorry, we should just say, for those who haven't played the game, it's another 2D mascot, puzzle platformer. Your goal is to collect all of the baby birds from a level and lead them to an exit. And they follow you in this long trail. And if a enemy intercepts your trail, the chain breaks and you have to collect them again. And you have to get all the birds in one go in under 20 seconds in all 10 levels. And if you can accomplish that, the game rewards you with a shot of a topless woman shaking her booty at the camera. Do you see it down here in the bottom, guys? You see that?
Mm.
And I did this and confirmed it works. One of the windows pops open. She goes, and her little booty shakes for a few seconds. And I just love the idea that some kid was just really that good at this game. Actually, Butch, is this your origin story? Because you played this as a kid. Do you remember this this Easter egg?
I don't think I ever got this as a kid. And I may have, because I did, I will spoil this. I will say I beat it, but I don't remember this. I may not have been paying attention or just didn't know it was coming, so I didn't look. But yeah, so I don't.
But you, Nintendo, did beat this game.
Family computer.
And I, Nintendo, did.
Family computer.
How about you, Mike?
Oh, not even close.
Not even close.
I didn't even make it to the lizards.
Okay, so you did not make it very far.
No, I got very frustrated with this and the starting over every time, and I'm just like, no.
So, but you're the only one to have played this game as a kid. What was your impression back then, and what was it like to come back to it?
So as an adult, I will say I have a better appreciation for it because, as I stated earlier, like this was, you went to the game store and this was the game you rented for the weekend. So guess what? If you picked a bad game, you get to live with it for the weekend.
That's right.
So, as probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, and I rented this and I'm like, great, this is not what I expected, not what I wanted. As somebody who enjoyed like the Streets of Rage series or Sonic or any of those on the Sega Genesis, definitely was not up my alley at all. And I think I probably played it for a little bit and then I just shelved it for the weekend till we had to return it.
And did it not fare any better? You said you appreciate it a little bit more now.
Oh yeah, I think as an adult it definitely is better because I knew more what I was going into, and obviously you're a little bit more developed than when you were a child, so you know what you're doing a little bit more. So
yeah,
I think being older definitely helped me enjoy it more.
I like the way Flicky moves. Flicky is fast and has this big jump, this big floaty jump. He can't fly, but I think that would have just been a different genre of game. But like you can really aim your jump, and you have a lot of air time to kind of maneuver. Coming off of Mappy-Land, I felt like a freaking superhuman. So I liked Flicky's movement, and I find it really satisfying when you turn in a big chain of chicks, like ding 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 ding, and it almost feels like a slot machine going off when you can get a whole bunch of them. Mike is laughing at my terminology, I think, but yeah, the chirps there. I don't know. I didn't particularly like saving them, but I like saving them in large numbers. What do you got to say, Mike? You're making a face.
This is an interesting way to phrase it. I didn't like saving them, but I like saving a lot of them.
Yeah. Kind of all I got to say that's positive about this game. What, you want to say anything else in defense of Flicky before we tear it up like Tiger would?
I don't think so.
Mike, go for it. You're holding back.
First of all, this side bit, was that meant to be also a Tiger Woods reference in the same go, or did you just fall into that one?
I'm just naturally good at podcasting, Mike. Like, you just have to accept it.
I mean, why'd you start now then?
Yeah, see?
This is going to be a very backhanded compliment to this game, because this has sort of this wraparound screen thing going where you very much get into the situation where it's like, okay, I am moving quickly one direction and then trying to jump up and down levels. And at a certain point, I'm like, this just feels like a much more claustrophobic Joust.
You always compare everything to Joust.
Everything to Joust, yeah. Joust is my Dark Souls.
Right. Doom is first-person Joust with guns. And
yeah. And I think it's just because there's not much space between platforms, and it sort of the margin for being able to get up or down a platform feels very tight. And like if there was a little bit more space horizontally between the platforms, and you actually could, if they gave you a little bit more ability to change your trajectories into more of a I'm flying up, flying down kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more because it would have felt like I could move smoother between platforms in my mind.
I will say though, you say Mike compares everything to Joust. This does, jumping wise, remind me of Joust in the way you have the floaty jump. So I feel like in this case, the comparison is just.
Yeah, it's apt.
Yeah, give me just like 10% more floaty.
This game though, painfully repetitive. Like, going from Mappy-Land, it's like, oh, I'm in the spooky town, and now I'm in the castle, and like this is just like, which color apartment building are you going to be in? And there's a variety of weapons that are strewn about, and you collect it by walking over it, and then you can see sort of Flicky sort of hold on to it in his beak, or her beak. I'm not sure what the gender is. But what's annoying though is that you're meant to launch these things. So you launch the object out in front of you, but you do that with the same button that you jump. So there's no way to like get a weapon and then take it to an enemy that's above me and take it out. It's just, whenever games go out of their way to make it a single button experience, and it would work better with just even two buttons, it's very, very frustrating. I did not like.
Wasn't this arcade game initially.
Yeah.
I mean, those buttons cost money.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like you keep the cabinet the same, you replace the innards or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I found that frustrating. I'm like, okay, this is why this is happening. I acknowledge why this is what I've got to deal with. I agree it was frustrating for exactly that same reason, though.
And then like the bonus levels, like oof, what a snooze fest. It was just like you had to catch these baby chicks in your net as they are being launched up in the air. The only difference is the pattern the chicks fall in. And I know, this is derived from an arcade game, so you have to take it with that grain of salt, but I don't know. I just didn't find it very fun.
The bonus levels, to me, I took it akin to Galaga. That's the way I felt it. Like when we got to them, I was like, okay, here's the Galaga stage where you got to follow the pattern and you're golden.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the pattern of enemies falling towards you, kind of.
I was surprised to see in sort of like the demo screens, because I didn't get there, that so both Flappy and the cats basically just move along the platforms. I was surprised to see that the lizards would actually go onto like the walls and the ceiling. If for no other reason, then that is actually like a distinct additional feature that had to be coded in. Like that's not just we reskinned things. It's like you actually had to make these work differently. So I do appreciate that from a technical level. And I bet those would have been interesting to deal with if I ever got that far in this game.
They weren't though. They were just they added nothing, honestly.
A lot of those levels, I felt it was rush and get the birds and get to the exit. There wasn't, to me, it felt like engaging was kind of pointless. It was more just rush and go.
Well, according to John Supaniak's book, The Untold History of Japanese Game Developers, the Flicky designers are trying to base the concept of this game around a parent's desire to protect their children and guide them safely home. But the baby birds all behave more or less identically and cannot actually be harmed. You're the only one that's in danger. All they can be is, the chain can break, but you just recollect them. So I never really got the feeling of feeling protective of them. I think that concept is just a lot better executed in like the Pikmin series, for example, or the aforementioned Sonic 3D Blast, because in that one, the birds you're rescuing all have distinct personalities. The blue one comes towards you, the red one tries to get away from you, the green one moves real slow and is kind of the glutton of the group. So I don't know. I didn't really care about the baby birds, and that sounds monstrous, but the game didn't make me.
I mean, so is your complaint that like not enough baby birds were being eaten in this game?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just I think having baby birds of different colors that have different behaviors when they're not part of your chain would have gone a long way. Because I mean, even like Pac-Man, you got the ghosts with the different colors that have different behaviors. It just would have been one extra thing to learn. And actually, I think you might find it funny if I go back to the box art here. All the birds wearing the sunglasses on the box art, that's because those are the bad chirps. And if you guys saw in the game, some of the baby birds have sunglasses, and that's because they don't try to make their way to you. They do their own thing. They Bart Simpson it, and they like, their badness as communicated through their cool guy sunglasses. So, anything else to say about Flicky, guys, before we go on to our last game of the day?
I guess I appreciate the sunglasses on the covers. They didn't try to give them like things going for the ears because they're birds, which just feels like someone thought about that. This isn't relevant to the gameplay.
Reaching for praise.
No. It is just a thought. Like I am actually slightly surprised they didn't just have regular glasses on birds, even though that wouldn't make sense.
I just felt, and you showed the book about the Japanese video game. To me, for whatever reason, as I'm collecting these birds, it made me think of the Japanese tradition. And I think it's been abolished a little bit more, but around holidays, where they would just bring chicks together to kind of sell to the children. Like, oh, here's this baby chick, and they would sell them by the dozens. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but that's what it made me think of as I'm collecting these little baby chicks and bringing them to the door, and you're racking up your score right as you're collecting them in the door, and it's just making me think. And you brought up the whole casino thing. I'm like, okay, you're getting paid out for bringing these chicks home to possibly sell. I don't know. Nobody else probably made that connection, but for whatever reason, I did.
It makes sense. I think like there's a cultural touchstone that I was missing until you just shared that. Thank you. I think that actually is, I could totally see that, at least, even if subconsciously, that being part of Japanese culture kind of working its way into this game.
I really want Peeps now.
Well, Well, Mike, you can't have them yet because we're moving on to game number 3, which is Spanky's Quest, released on the Super Nintendo in 1992. I will regale you guys with the description from the Nintendo Switch Online emulator. It reads, the witch Morticia, and yes, there is a witch named Morticia that this is kind of blatantly ripping off here, has come to bring darkness to Mappy-Land. In this 1992 action game released for the Super NES console, Spanky the monkey was on his way to a picnic when Morticia began dropping bricks from the sky. Trapped with 6 towers now built across the land, Spanky must clear each before the witch's evil pet crow catches him. On his way, he faces the fruit he packed for his picnic, now cursed and alive. He'll have to use his magic ball to stun enemies, bounce it off his head to power it up, and pop it to attack, and try on some hats along the way. Butch, am I correct in saying this was the game that you sort of signed up for this episode to discuss?
It is. And it's probably weird for a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people probably, you've never heard of this game, or if they have, probably never touched it.
Now, did this start your Super Saiyan journey because it's like an ape warrior? You know what I mean? And so like subconsciously you're like, hey, monkey's pretty cool.
I mean, I could see it. I definitely, now that you put that together, I could definitely see it. Looking back at this game, though, it is a huge fever dream for me, just because, and I go back to the story of back with Flicky, of going to the video game store, and I have this distinct memory of going with my dad to our local like mom and pop store, and I see this game, I see the cover, and I'm like, I have to play this, right? And this is one of those where I didn't shelve it. Like, even though it was like, I have, as a kid, no idea what's going on. There's no story element. You're a monkey that's walking along, and all of a sudden you get a building that's built around you, and the shadow of the witch and the crow are there, and like the fruit falls out of your backpack and they're alive. Good luck. Like, that's it. And so like that, this was like this game that I'm like, I have to beat this game. For whatever reason, I have to get through this. Don't ask me why my child mind was like that. But, that was, that was my weekend journey. And being that I would see my father every other weekend, this was what we did, like we would I would rent this game. I'd go to the store with him and I would rent him this game every weekend until I beat it.
Did he ever just buy it at some point? Like, this kid's not going to stop renting Spanky's Quest.
No, actually, this was not one that we did. We did the regulars, Mario Kart and Super Mario World. Super Mario World came with the console, but all the other ones we did. But for whatever reason, this one was just the one I always had to get when I stayed and we went to the video store.
I imagine it's because buying this game puts you on a list. I don't know what list that is, but
probably.
To imagine some hungover teenager working at that video store, like, some kid keeps renting Spanky's Quest, man. You know what I mean? Like, your fascination like went someone down a different journey that was probably not what they were expecting.
Right? Exactly. So yeah, it's just, and I can imagine my dad probably every other, like, he's getting this game again. Like, I got to take this up to the counter. Like,
boy, ain't right. We got to do something.
Right.
So let's go through the box art. Can I do this one first? But you remember seeing this on the shelf, but I hate this box art. Oh my gosh, I hate it. It's all off-centered. It's like Spanky and the pineapple are crammed to the left, and then you have a game of volleyball being played by, is that a kiwi? Is that a kiwi? What is that?
I think it could be a melon, but I swear I have no idea. I've been trying to figure that out.
I think you're right. I remember from Pac-Man, that was the melon. The melon, and then an apple with fantastic legs, let's be honest. But like, it almost looks like this should have been a wraparound cover, because there's this blank space in the middle that I could imagine like a spine of like a book or a game. You guys see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Can you picture it? Do you remember, Butch? Was this a wraparound?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure this was it. Like,
okay.
From what I remember, this was it. And whatever they did, they definitely drew me in, because I got it based off the cover. So if it got nobody else, it did get one kid.
One sale. So the game in Japan was called Monkey Reflections: The Adventures of Mr. Jiro. I think this is a better cover. I think it's cute, but Butch, with this, it's just the monkey in the center, and he kind of has a little lost look on his face, and you can see the antagonistic fruit kind of behind him. This is my preferred one, but no dice. Butch, you're a purist.
Looking back at it now, as being older, yeah, I could definitely see this being better. Would I look at it as a kid? I probably not. The other one probably would have grabbed me more, but
Honestly, I think the other one's better because the Japanese one feels much more like a monkey having an acid flashback, which is not this game, but
Right.
I feel like the other one has more of the elements. It raises a lot of questions.
Mike refers to the elements of the game, so you can see the cascade of bubbles falling onto the pineapple, but it doesn't really communicate to me that they're bouncing off of Spanky's head. It almost looks like Spanky dodged them. They were gonna hit Spanky, now they're hitting the pineapple instead. I just it simultaneously feels cluttered in some spots and empty in others.
To continue this conversation, I think we actually need to go over more what this game is, and I'd like to do that in two parts and then return back to this cover. So the first of all, I would like to give you what the description of the manual's background of this game is, because the game starts with a cutscene with no words that is very confusing
and unskippable.
Yes, also unskippable, which is an amazing extra touch. And so in the manual, this is the background. Spanky the monkey was going on a picnic. As Spanky was happily walking in the forest of Mappy-Land, out of nowhere, bricks came falling down from the sky, building a wall that reached to the clouds. At the same time, bricks were falling everywhere, in the cities, in the mountains, and in the forests, forming huge towers.
Biblical.
Spanky, who was trapped in one of the dark towers, was stunned, and from above he heard a strange voice. Ha ha ha, what do you think of my beautiful home? At this moment, the tower lit up, and the bearer of the strange voice appeared. Spanky looked up and saw a witch wearing a black robe riding on a broom. A nasty-looking crow was perched on her shoulder. I am Morticia from the world of darkness. I have come to bring darkness into your world. Let me out of here, screamed Spanky. No way. Why should I let my new playmate go? You will play tag with my crow. There are 6 towers that I built. If you defeat the guard on top of the tower, the door to the next tower will open. If you make it to the last tower without the crow catching you, I might set you free. Will you really let me go? Ha ha ha, you will only know if you come, but first let me make you some playmates to play with. Here. From the witch's finger, a spell was cast on Spanky's knapsack.
This is amazing.
All the fruits that were in his knapsack rolled out, shook around a bit, and started growing arms and legs. It looks like the fruits have taken a great liking to you. They tell me they like you so much, they want to gobble you up. Ha ha ha. With these words, the witch and the crow flew away. But wait, what's this? A strange-looking ball had fallen from the witch's pocket. Spanky picked it up, and the ball started talking to him. I have escaped from the clutches of the evil Morticia. Swallow me, and I can help you defeat her.
Oh my god, it's like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. So, the premise here is all of the fruit in this is Spanky's fruit he has to defeat to get to the witch to get out of these towers with this weird ball that as he tosses up in the air and then as he bounces it on his head, it upgrades from baseball to, I think it's baseball to soccer ball to volleyball to basketball, which are used as attacks. Now, the reason I wanted to cover all of that and then return back to the cover here, first of all, Morticia, clearly described as being in black, is wearing all red.
Right.
Second of all, where the heck did he get a freaking banana? All his fruit's supposed to be trying to eat him now. And third of all, the weapons are various sports balls, and there's a volleyball game going on in the background between a very nervous melon and a uncomfortably sexy apple.
Uncomfortably sexy apple, new band name. I can't believe I didn't consider it, but you're right. You have a plot of the monkey's fruits are rebelling against him, but there's not a banana anywhere in the game.
Yeah, and the only one there is, he's holding still. I don't.
And then the sports ball should be killing these fruit by the rules that we've been taught. Butch, how much of this do you remember?
So, funnily enough, there is no in the American version. There is no story. Like the way I described it, where like you're walking through the woods and then the bricks fall and everything. That's not told through any words at all. It's just there's this cutscene and that's it. Like you get no like as far as I know, if the Japanese does, you have more words and there's actually more of a story and they give you that text. So as a kid that doesn't read the manuals because you're like pop the cartridge in, let's go, you've got no background to this. You've got no context. It's just bounce ball on head, ball kills enemy, get key, go. And that's it.
And it really drops you in to like a first level with. I didn't realize the game had started until I was starting to die.
Yep.
Yeah.
It just shoves you into this because it does this whole unskippable cutscene bit, which, because I read the manual first, I understood what was happening. But I'm also like, no one else will ever understand this without reading this manual. This is really coming out of nowhere.
Correct.
Right. Well, I mean, the makers had a history of weird games. I'll go through this quickly, but we'll revisit the developers Natsume when we do our Harvest Moon episode and our episode about Scat, which is Special Cybernetic Attack Team.
The naming Spanky's quest featuring a monkey is beginning to feel a lot less accidental.
Yes, exactly. The developer Toshiyasu Miyabe made the original Game Boy version, which was the very first version. We'll see him again when we do our SNES steampunk shooter Wild Guns. That game is rad. Yeah, it's as cool as it looks, Mike. This game slaps, as the kids would say. I don't have much trivia on Spanky's quest, but I did think you guys would find this amusing. There was a comic in Famitsu magazine. It was a tribute to the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, where they had different video game characters competing in different events. And so this is a screen grab of Spanky's cameo, in which he is in a boxing match against, of all people, Milo from Milo and Otis. The Adventures of Milo and Otis, a kids movie about a cat and a dog trying to like find their way home. Mike, do you remember this movie?
I have never seen this. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
Okay. The story originated in Japan, so there was a game that was fairly popular around the same time Spanky came out. But this was Milo and Otis was my mom's favorite. So like, what a weird connection.
The crossover that we didn't know we needed.
Exactly. Step aside, Smash Brothers. And you also might find it amusing that this game has the Archie seal of approval. There was an ad that ran in Archie magazine, and you can see recommended by Archie, as if the person Archie is real, like a real person. But I just love the confidence of this magazine ad. It just shows the two versions of Spanky's Quest, and it says, "Look, these are the games we've been waiting for." And it's like, unless you're Butch, who's waiting on Spanky's Quest? You know what I mean?
Can I add trivia to this?
Oh, you have some trivia for us. Yeah, go, Mike.
Yeah. So one thing that you've already sort of alluded to. So we have the character of Morticia.
Yes, the Addams Family witch name applied to this witch.
Yeah. I was going to stress that is not just also the same name as an Addams Family character. The name was invented for her. So this isn't like, oh, they have the same. It's like, no, you can't be like, oh, that's coincidental. Like, that's an invented name.
This is like Joe and Mac having a level called Jurassic Park.
Yeah, we're in that realm. Also because I think and can't fully confirm that the opening cutscene is borrowing the opening music to the Pink Panther, the first sequence of notes. And the last bit here, which is a fascinating thing that I don't think I've stumbled upon on one of these before, is because this is a very fascinating manual that I just recommend everybody to check out because it's weird and has a lot of strange information. Like all the characters, all these fruit, like their descriptions are not like just what they, and often it's not what they do in the game. It's like weirdly like descriptions of personalities. Like the description of Orangey is this orange, which was in Spanky's lunch, has become a monster, shows no emotions, but is a coward at heart. He does not like heights. And the whole set of them are like this weird, like they're like describing these like as, what vibes do they give off, not what they do as an attack.
I do wonder though, like, do you think the orange ones don't go toward the top of the screen maybe? And maybe that is sort of clever.
So the orange ones won't, they'll stay on the platform that they're on. They won't, like, if they go to an edge, they won't drop down where other ones will.
See, Mike?
So yeah, I feel like that's what they were like alluding to, but they could have just easily been like, hey, won't drop down from a ledge.
Some of them are, some of them, there's parts that connect and there's other parts that don't. It's odd. But the really odd bit that I didn't know was a thing that these things did, the very last page of the manual, all this is the US manual, is the Game Master Challenge. And I'm just going to read all this out. Defeat this game and take a picture of the ending screen with your face in it for SNES and NES games. Send the picture to Natsume, and you will be designated a Natsume Game Master, and you will be awarded the following prizes. 1, the Game Master sweatshirt, not available in stores. Please specify size. 2, Game Master certificate suitable for framing. 3, Game Master's names will appear in the Natsume newsletter. And then it has the following are the games which qualify for the Game Master Challenge. And actually, it has the Game Boy and SNES versions of Spanky's Quest. It actually does have their other game, Scat, as well as Tailgater and something Penguins. And so apparently, beating this game could get you a sweatshirt, which is like not a cheap prize.
Yeah, I'm looking at it online. There's actually a whole Facebook group for Natsume Game Masters, and you can't be part of the group unless you submit a picture of the shirt that you had. Like, this is rad. I have to bring this back.
And there's no expiration date on that, by the way.
Oh my gosh. We're going to go to court and demand our sweatshirt.
Yep. I got to go back and get a picture of me beating it and get my shirt.
Yeah, like I'm
That's wild.
looking over this, and there's no like do this by 1993 or something. Also, no real clear indication where you actually submit for this.
So, did you beat this game as a kid, Butch?
Oh yeah. Like I said, I rented it every weekend until I did, and I did.
Nintendo. Family computer.
And I Nintended.
Nintendo. Family computer.
And I did not start on this game early enough, so I have only gotten through one tower so far. So I did not.
Fair enough. So can we quickly get into what we liked about the game?
Yes.
All right, Butch, why don't you take us off? This is kind of your game.
So and this is looking through nostalgia glasses. I will 100% agree, tell you that beforehand. So this might have a little bit of bias, but just the colors of different things, the enemies, the different, the oranges, apples, all of that. They were very colorful. The backgrounds were very colorful, and going from an 8-bit system to a 16-bit, that was very mind blowing. I feel the bosses were very, even though they were all fruit, until you get to Morticia and her crow, were very inventive, and you had to kind of watch your patterns, the whole pattern recognition and everything. So I did enjoy that. The concept of bouncing the bubble on your head and getting the different balls definitely was different. You go from like a Super Mario or whatever, so that you jump on a character rather than having something bounce on your head. And I will say, and I remember this as a kid, having the bubble actually stun, so that way you can maybe get out of a difficult situation to set up the actual kill with bursting the bubble to get the balls, I thought was very inventive as well.
Yeah, it's nothing unique, and in fact, to the point that like I didn't even really know how to play this game until I read the description. I was like, oh, because like you start the game, you're like, well, he just throws a little bubble, and it's like that's a lame attack. And I didn't, discover organically that if it bounces off your head, the bubble changes color, and then the ball that will emerge from it is, more powerful. I totally agree with you. This game is just awesome to look at. The backgrounds are really neat. I really loved this one. It's the city background, and like you have these clouds in the background that are made of newspaper. Like that's just so inventive. It's such a simple concept, but I looked at it, I was like, wow, that's like art. And then like the sort of neon tinted Florida-esque kind of beach level. And like you said, the bosses, like they're well animated. They take up a big part of the screen. They have these big reactions, and a lot of their attacks are sort of themed to the type of fruit that they are. So like the watermelon spitting out seeds or whatever. I like looking at this game.
Was there a way to tell how much damage you had done on these things?
Not as far as I can remember, not really. It was just kind of attack until they're dead type of thing.
Like, was it just each time something hit them that counted as one, or would different things count as more damage, if you have any idea?
If I remember correctly, if you timed the volleyball right, because it did that spiral attack, it could do more.
Okay,
Right.
I specifically was wondering about that one actually, but I'm like, I can't tell how it's clearly something is happening to the enemy here, but I don't actually know if this boss is taking a lot of damage or if it's just counting as one for this whole thing.
So as far as I know, like if you did just the baseball, and you watched their animation, like it was real quick, like they just kind of flap real quick, like but then if you did like the soccer ball or higher, that animation stayed longer. So I'm fairly certain that the baseball just did like kind of minimum damage and the other ones did more.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's in my research, that seems to be the general consensus of all the Spanky speedrunners is like, yeah, if the attack patterns of your different sports balls will essentially keep the enemy in the damage state for longer and then be doing more damage overall.
About how long is a speed run of this game?
I think I've seen some people as quick as an hour.
Okay.
Wow.
Which, I mean, there are a lot of levels in this game, and so some of it is to getting the keys and getting out. I know a lot of people, especially like myself, I'm like, I want to kill everything, I want to get all the points, and some of it is just better to get the keys, get out.
Yeah, I feel like there's an instinct to want to kill everything. I started that, and that sounds like a lot more of a red flag. That
Kind of getting on a list. Yeah, forget about buying Spanky's quiz. That got you on a list there.
And at a certain point, there's some levels that I eventually had to realize, like, I don't have to defeat those enemies. I can leave, and that's going to be a lot less stressful and keep my lives intact.
Hey, can you guys see on the screenshots here? What was that in the top left of the screen underneath the castle icon? It looks like there's some kind of meter or something, but I could never notice it changing. I have no idea what that's meant to indicate. Do either of you guys know?
You know what? I never really paid attention, but I'm wondering if it's supposed to be which tower you're in. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, like your progress through the game?
Yeah, and which is funny because I didn't know until you read out the description that these were different towers. I thought it was she just built her castle around you and that was it. And so like when you get to the second world and it's kind of like, oh, that's San Francisco in the background, or maybe like you said, the Florida one, or even underwater, I'm like, how does she have these different floors in her castle that are outdoors? How does this, like, even just recently playing this again, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But now that you read that out and said, oh, these are different towers, okay, this makes a little bit more sense, I guess.
Yeah, no, this game feels like one of the best examples I can think of that has a whole lot of story that was created for the game that's not in the game in a clear way.
Absolutely. Can we start to criticize it? Because I got some bones to pick with Spanky.
Yeah, I think I'm at that point.
I mean, are we getting into the pros and cons at this point, or?
Yeah, I think we kind of covered the pros.
I do have one other thing to its credit. I'm going to say this is by far the most edible looking food that has tried to kill us during this podcast.
Yeah, it's a leagues above Burger Time.
Yeah, I definitely give it credit for that. It's weird that we've come back to being attacked by food.
But here we are.
Yeah.
So my cons for this, there's a list of things that I definitely have. When it comes to the power-up hats, there's not really an indication of like what they're good for until you kind of like accidentally stumble upon it. Early on, you get like the Fez hat, and that one like instantly makes your bubble big. But then you get the other ones like the Viking helmet, which I believe it lets you take a hit without losing a life. There's a straw hat. I think that lets you float a little bit more. I don't remember exactly how that one works.
You can glide. If you hold down the jump button, you'll glide.
Okay. So like the fact that they don't really tell you what they are, they might in the manual, but once again, going back as a kid, you don't read the manual, you slap the cartridge in and you go. And so that was always kind of frustrating to me. The trying to think, I had it. I guess the controllability of Spanky himself can get a little frustrating when he throws the bubble up because you'll kind of throw it up in this little bit of an angle rather than straight ahead. So that can get kind of frustrating at times. And jumping over enemies in general, there's a lot of times where you're like, oh, I clearly have jumped over. No, I didn't. I got hit.
Yeah. Hit detection spotty.
going back to the bosses earlier, like at the end, they did that classic trope of, we're going to do a boss gauntlet before you face the witch. And if you die at any of those, you go all the way back to the beginning of that boss gauntlet. And that's always so frustrating. And yeah, this game has a password system, but you have to get through so many levels in a boss before you get that password back to that world. So it can be very, very frustrating to try and get through these levels. I mean, as an adult, you have difficult. Can you imagine me being a kid doing this just determined every weekend to get this down and getting those passwords written down? I mean, nowadays you can look it up in the internet, but I'd write it down. Oh, look, here's a new password. Okay, I got another step forward. So yeah, controls are very, very, I don't know, I feel like they miss in this game.
Yeah, I think you brought up two things related to my issues. Number one, 100% agree. Like, if you have a password system, do not make me beat 10 levels and a boss if I am only starting off with 3 lives. Either give me continues somehow, which is really just more lives, or give me at least 5 levels in or something. Like, give it 5 and 10 in the boss. Like, give me a couple spots here, because that is, for having a password system, that is too infrequently giving passwords.
Mm-hmm.
And Spanky only takes 1 hit before dying. And when you get hit, the level doesn't start over. He kind of just goes
mm-hmm.
And then he flashes, and so he's invincible for a few seconds. But I can see this going south real quick, and just 1 life after another, and then you're done.
Yep.
Especially because since if you're going to stay put and the enemies are going to stay put, the balls in motion should stay in motion. When you get hit, they disappear.
It's so frustrating.
And I'm like, if you didn't do that, but if they still stayed in, then you'd at least have okay, they hit me, I hit them, offsetting damage has been done. But instead, you're just getting stuck where you get hit, and if you're in a bad area, it's like, well, I got hit, and it cleared the balls that I was trying to use, and before I can hit anything again, I'm going to get hit again before I can actually do damage to something. I am just stuck. And I think I had one where I lost 3 lives in one spot because I was in a bad spot, and sort of there wasn't an out.
I assume it's a programming thing, right? They didn't know how to program Spanky dying, but then potentially beating a boss, right? So just to remove that possibility, they just made it that whenever Spanky gets hit, his attack disappears as well. That's what I would guess.
I think it would have been perfectly fine to be if that was your last if that's game over, it's game over. Otherwise, Spanky losing a life and killing something at the same time is perfectly fine. That could have been how that worked. The hats that Butch brought up is also very frustrating, especially because the first time you find one, I got it after everything else was defeated on that level. So I got a hat and then left the level, and then I had no hat again. And I'm like, if you're going to do it this way, let the hat go to the next level.
Let him keep his hat. He's been through a lot.
Yeah, that definitely is a frustration that a lot of times they'll give you a hat at the end of a level. You've already cleared everything, but okay, so now you get a hat. Cool. Now what?
It's also weird that you have to get the hats, and they're that hard to get, but on the cover of the game, he's wearing a hat.
And I didn't like the imbalance of attacks. So it's the first time you bounce it off your head, it becomes a 1-hit baseball. Okay. Second one, it's a cascade of soccer balls, which is kind of cool because it's a waterfall attack. The volleyball, which is a vortex, is very hard to aim. And then and they're all really hard to aim, except for the basketball, which does this spread fire shot and basically covers the whole screen. So it's just it almost they acknowledged that the controls weren't getting it done. So make the final attack just overpowered. And I just found myself using that basketball over and over again. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not like the way this handled the trajectories of that, because it felt so hard to sort of control. And because so many of them be situations where I would try to use the others. And I can't actually get this to work, because you have to get your timing so right if you want to do something like hit someone below you with the volleyball, because you have to time it to their motion. But it's not just time it to their motion. You have to time 3 bounces to their motion.
Right.
The lead time on this is ridiculous.
And then, I considered it a con before you explained it, Mike, but it feels like such a mishmash of 90s ideas. It's oh, what do kids love? Oh, cute animals. What else do they like? Well, sports and blowing bubbles. What do they hate? Fruits and vegetables. All right, we got a game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's a weird one, and I don't mean that in a good way for the most part. Anything else to criticize about Spanky's Quest before we wrap it up?
The other things that I find frustrating, there's two other things, is that there's a lot of levels that don't give you a chance to react. There's some enemies, especially like when you come across the kiwis the first time. They're kiwi birds. You spawn in the level and one is right in your face and can take a life if you're not quick enough. And I feel like there's other levels with that too, where they just start right there. And if you don't move, you don't get out of the way, you're losing a life. The other thing is that there's no timer, but there is a time limit on levels. And if you aren't quick enough, you have this her unkillable crow that you can't avoid, you can't kill it, you can't anything, comes in and he'll take a life from you. And I get there's a lot of the beginning levels are, you get in, you get out, you're done. But some of the later ones, they're a little bit bigger and you need to explore and you need to kind of figure out, okay, like how do I go about doing this? And by that point, the crow comes in. And there you go. You lose a life or it's a game over at that point. So I find that kind of frustrating. Either give me a timer to show that it's coming or don't do it at all. One of the two.
Yeah.
I think that instead of a crow, it should have been a giant coin that comes after you.
Yeah.
It's the same mechanic, but I
Yep.
am, for the record, a fan of that. Like, instead of just dying when the timer hits 0, give me something I'm trying to escape. It adds an
Right.
extra little bit of drama, but you're right, without knowing when that crow is coming, and it feels almost like what should have been that thing in the top left. That little meter should have been when the crow is going to arrive, but I never noticed it warning me.
And probably the last thing is there are bonus levels in this game. And if you don't know where to look, you're never going to find them.
I beat the whole game and never found one.
The way I found them actually as a kid was on accident. And there's actually, it's a lot of times you just have to go up to a brick wall or let one of the bubbles fall on the floor and it opens up a door. And if you don't know that, you're never going to find them.
I should have been experimenting more with the bubbles because I had discovered on one of the levels that sometimes for the cannon things that would shoot you up, that if you dropped a bubble on them, you could get a 1-up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which I discovered in the process of dying a lot and just missing with bubbles. And I was like, oh, didn't realize that's a 1-up coin at first. But when I did, I was like, oh, that's really helpful because that level is very painful and I need the lives.
The bonus levels are cool too because it's just bounce a bubble off your head, but it gets bigger and bigger until eventually the bubble is like the size of the screen and you're still trying to like keep it in the air or whatever. But yeah, it looked neat. I just never got to try it because Butch, you're right. Those things are well hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so shall we move on to our rankings?
Yeah.
All right, so at the end of every episode, we are going to declare each game a NintenDo or a NintenDON'T. Starting off with Mappy-Land. If I can start us off, actually, let's have our guest start us off. Butch, Mappy-Land, NintenDo or NintenDON'T for you?
So for me personally, I would say a NintenDON'T. Just because, I feel like if you're going to go back and play an older game, there's probably better platformers you could play.
Yeah, I think it's a NintenDo for me because I liked the different environments. I like the theming. It barely ekes out on Nintendo. I don't think you should play past the 8th stage. Like Mike said, the game loops. Go through one loop and then call it a day. But I don't know. There was just enough environmental theming and kind of neat ideas that I say, Mappy-Land a little bit of your time. So Mike, tiebreaker.
I think with it having 4 rounds, I'm at least going to say NintenDO for the first 3. And then the 4th one crossed a threshold into too frustrating, just in general with being slow. So I mean, I guess 3/4 of a NintenDO I think is just a Ninten.
We're rounding up. That's 2 NintenDos. Let's go on to Flicky. Butch, what's your verdict?
I would say NintenDO. If you've got like a half hour, 40 minutes you need to kill, and you just want kind of like a brainless kind of puzzle platformer, go for it.
Really?
Yeah.
To me, it's a NintenDON'T for me. It's just so repetitive. Visually, there's just nothing really to like about it. And then, it's just, I didn't find it fun. I don't like Flicky. Cute, but NintenDON'T.
I think I am also going NintenDO'N't on this one. I just found it very frustrating and it becomes very repetitive, especially because I kept dying and having to start the whole thing over again. And none of those were levels that I wished to return to.
But it's just the same level over and over again. It was ugly, weird colored apartments.
Even if it's literally the same level over and over again, there was not even like, at least with Mappy-Land, there was bits that was frustrating every round to come back around to. Hated the jungle every time. Some of the others, like, okay, I enjoy much of the rest of these.
All right, and Butch, the moment you were born for, Spanky's Quest,
So
Nintendo or NintenDON'T.
100% through nostalgia goggles, but I would say a Nintendo.
Really? It aged well enough.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we all like that game of like you have a balloon and you smack it up in the air and see how long you can keep it before it hits the ground. That's more fun than this. I would literally rather play with a balloon in an empty room than play. I just didn't like it. I beat the whole thing and it's just like, it's just ill-conceived. I don't know. It's not offensively bad, but there's nothing I would say is really fun or satisfying. So NintenDON'T for me. Mike, once again, the tiebreaker.
Have you seen that Simpsons meme where it's Apu looking at Homer walking off, and usually they'll put some other thing over that, and it's Apu saying he slept, he stole, he was rude to the customers. Still, there goes the best employee a convenience store ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna give it a Nintendo, aren't you?
I'm giving it a Nintendo. I can't properly explain what. I think there's such a weird just the combination of things that this has done. It fascinates me in this weird way where it's like there's elements of this that are interesting. There's elements of this that are weird. There's elements of this that are frustrating. And it just hits this point where I'm like, I kind of have to be like, you should check this out. I'm not sure it will be worth it if I can get, far beyond the one tower I've beaten. But this whole thing is, I mean, we went through a whole weird discussion and didn't touch the fact that this also has various hats with powers in it, like until well into the discussion of this game. That's the kind of thing other games would like lead with.
Yeah, it's a fascinating mess, I gotta admit.
Do you think there's any chance the cover on Spanky's Quest that is not actually a sunset and is in fact a giant orange coming to kill him?
Yeah, well, it's afraid of heights, so I don't know how that ties in.
That game it's weirdly haunting in its strangeness.
I get you.
Like I said at the beginning, it is definitely a fever dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're gonna call that game over for today. So the final scores are Nintendo for Spanky's Quest and Mappy-Land, and NintenDON'T for Flicky. So, Butch, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a blast through the past. Before you go, why don't you tell our listeners one more time where they can find your stuff?
You can find me on Twitch, SSJ3Butch. Once again, I do all kinds of different streams, so come on in, check it out. We always have a good time.
Excellent. Well, that sounds good. Everyone join us next time when Mike and I are going to be dahokening deeper into the Nintendo Switch Online catalog and our epic quest to research and review them all. Next on the docket, Street Fighter ripoffs, particularly Fighter's History and Doomsday Warrior for the SNES. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcheroo.com. That's AROO.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, our Discord, YouTube, TikTok, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Please like, comment, subscribe, and review. And as always, thank you for listening to The Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and JMO.
I've been Mike.
And I've been JMO. Game on, everyone. The Hodag.
The Hodag.
Is that Celtic? It sort of sounds vaguely like Viking-esque.
I'm not too sure. I know like a lot of our ancestry around here is either Polish or German. So it could be one of those two. I just know I believe it was a local man that made it up, and he just the Wisconsin cryptid, and it just kind of ran from there. Even like the Rhinelander High School, that's their mascot. And it's embodied, quite a few places around here.
I have a book on like cryptids.
I love that origin story though.
That area of the country, and this I don't remember being mentioned at all.
Really?
And I had to deal with a whole bunch of like, yeah, there's a sort of large dog around here nonsense, and this wasn't present at all.
Really? Okay, so I've heard of the dog. I can't remember the name of it, but it's not.
Hodag.
I'll tell you, the Hodag is definitely. You mentioned it in Wisconsin, everybody knows what you're talking about.
I like that
This is
Wikipedia
really
has a
cool.
picture of it being captured.
Oh yeah, it.
Actually, what's better about that is the caption is Hodag captured by Eugene Shepard, 1893. And the word captured in the caption is in like quotes, but the
Right.
word Hodag is totally fine here. Wikipedia felt that whether or not it was captured was questionable, but that it was a Hodag was totally what was going on.
I think it is irrefutably a Hodag. What's really weird about that is that I had this whole like alternate intro I ended up not going with, talking about cryptozoology, because like, you know, the animals in today's episode, they're all like anthropomorphic, but they're not like, you know, real, like mice aren't actually able to do that. So it's very strange that this took this kind of turn right away.
Yeah, this just naturally came up.
The den is to the right where he kept the Hodag. He didn't catch this. He claims to have captured it and then continued to have it. This is wow.
I think Mike's gonna go down a whole Hodag rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Or
I mean,
I guess a Hodag hole. I don't know. It seems like they'd be subterranean.
A rabbit Hodag. He's in Paul Bunyan stories. Where was that in the Disney short?
Right? I didn't know that.
I mean, that's Wikipedia says that with exactly 0 citations, and you can't have it on Wikipedia with 0 citations if it's not true.
Because they'll delete it.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. That was sarcasm, wasn't it? Walked right into that one.